Well, my next guest has plenty of experience getting information out of Peter Strzok, or at least trying.
Did you write it? Did you write that text?
I did write that, sir.
Okay. Were you under duress?
Political expression engaging in hyperbole. That text in no way suggested that I or the FBI would take any action to influence the candidacy of
Agent Strzok. That is a fantastic answer to a question nobody asked.
Former House Oversight Committee Chair, former prosecutor, and Fox News contributor Trey Gowdy joins me live. Congressman, good to see you.
You too, Ed. How are you?
What's it like to hear that played back, where Peter Strzok, under oath, told you to your face he didn't try to do anything to influence the election?
Well, Ed, I mean, I'm not a big fan of public hearings. I'm much more of a fan of the deposition. You just made reference to a line of questioning that Johnny Ratcliffe engaged in. I read the deposition again today. The most constructive information we got from Peter Strzok is when we were behind closed doors, no time limits, could ask whatever we want. That's where the real information came. Listening to that, the insurance policy. I mean, being pressed on that. The most charitable view of what they meant by the insurance policy is they had a source. They had a confidential informant that they didn't want to burn. And I would invite you to use this analogy. If you got a drug source, you got a confidential informant, you're not going to use that source to burn Jeff Spicoli in Fast Times, but you might to get Pablo Escobar.
Right.
So their analysis was, we're not going to burn this source because we don't think Donald Trump is going to win. So lay aside their poor election forecasting for a moment. Guess what? He did. So if you have a source that has information or evidence that the leader of the free world is an agent of Russia, come on with it. Give it to us. Your concern that you were burning a source on somebody who couldn't win, that's over.
Here we are more than 2 years later.
Give us the information.
They haven't come out with it more than 2 years later, Congressman. You mentioned John Ratcliffe. Yeah, go ahead.
There is no information because there is nothing. There is no source.
So John Ratcliffe, you mentioned the questioning. We've got part of that graphic where basically he pressed and said, did Special Counsel Mueller or anyone with the Special Counsel's team, did they come to you, Peter Strzok, and ask you about whether any of this evidence, you know, the insurance policy and all of that had any impact on the election? And Peter Strzok, under oath, says no. Why hasn't Bob Mueller or any other investigative authority gone to him and gotten to the bottom of this insurance policy?
Ed, because I think you and I just got to the bottom of it. The insurance policy is Lisa Page, Peter McCabe, and Andy McCabe and Peter Strzok all sitting in a room saying, look, he's not likely to win. But upon the remote chance that he is, we have an insurance policy, which is this FISA investigation. It's a counterintelligence investigation that we launched in July. That was their insurance policy. They just never thought he was going to win.
But doesn't that suggest the Mueller probe? The Mueller probe, was it started with a lie?
I view the Mueller probe as looking into what Russia did to this country in 2016. That part is not a lie. The second part of what Mueller is doing is with whom, if anyone, did they do it. I've seen no indictments, no convictions on the crime of collusion, in part because it's not a crime. But let's say conspiracy to hack the DNC server, conspiracy to hack Podesta's emails. I've seen no indictments of any Americans, much less Trump campaign officials, on either one of those. So, yeah I think Mueller, Russia, yes. Collusion, no.
Got it. Congressman, real quick, I want to be fair because we've been going around and around about this transcript going after Peter Strzok. His attorney put out this statement, quote, Pete welcomes the release of the transcript, contrary to the impression that the president's allies in Congress tried to create with their selective and often inaccurate leaks. Pete, at all times, the attorney says, discharged his duties honorably, patriotically, and without regard to his personal political opinions. True or false?
That's why you hire lawyers, so you can pay them to say what nobody else in the world would say. I actually do think the transcript should be made public. I'd love for Jerry Nadler to release every bit of it and let the American people see whether or not Peter Strzok is a patriot. Judge for yourselves.
I mentioned this at the top. Barack Obama, as president in 2016, sat down with her own Chris Wallace and was pressed about whether there was any interference by the Obama Justice Department, who was supporting Hillary Clinton, essentially the Obama team. Was there any interference with this FBI investigation on the email and other matters? Here's what he said.
I guarantee that there is no political influence in any investigation conducted by the Justice Department or the FBI, not just in this case, but in any case.
And she will be
full stop, period.
Full stop, period. And yet Lisa Page in another transcript testified again under oath that that same Obama Justice Department told her and others at the FBI, basically, do not prosecute Hillary Clinton. Doesn't that sound like interference?
I don't even have to get to that, Ed. How about what the president said? He said that she had no intent to jeopardize national security. The president himself, not his Department of Justice, he himself, in the middle of an ongoing investigation, said that there was no evidence on the most important evidentiary element, which was intent. He also did it in the IRS targeting scandal. Remember that? He said there was not an ounce of corruption. So that's twice in two high-profile investigations where the top of the executive branch has weighed in. We asked Comey about it. That didn't bother him.
Yeah.
Of course, when Trump says, can you let Flynn go, that's obstruction of justice. But when the president weighs in, it's not.
I got 15 seconds. John Huber was his prosecutor in Utah. He was supposed to get to the bottom of FBI abuses, whether there was a Russia hoax. What's the deal? Do we need to send a search party out to find him? I haven't heard anything from him.
Well, I mean, prosecutors aren't great at handling media. I think Barr's going to make him do his job. The Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, is going to do his job. I think at some point we're going to know all of what happened in 2016, 17, and 18 as it relates to the Department of Bureau.
We shall see if the Attorney General, William Barr, follows up. Congressman Gowdy, appreciate you coming in with your insight.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
President Trump turning Mueller's report into a political advantage tonight, but will he continue to use it on the 2020 campaign trail? Time for tonight's Power Panel. Principal of Clifton Consulting, Marjorie Clifton. The Director of Strategic Communications for the Trump 2020 campaign, Mark Lauder, and Fox News contributor Guy Benson. Welcome to all of you.
Hey, Shannon.
Thank you. So the Wall Street Journal writes an opinion piece. This is Karl Rove writing for the Wall Street Journal. The headline is "Move on from Robert Mueller, Mr. President." He says Team Trump should use the Mueller report to pivot to issues like the economy and the opioid crisis that matter to swing voters who will decide the 2020 presidential election. President should focus his time, voice, and tweets on the roaring economy, impressive job creation, and bigger paychecks. That said, Guy, I don't think that he's going to resist this so-called victory lap.
And he probably shouldn't, let's be honest. I'm all for pivoting to issues. I've always said I wished he was a bit more disciplined in his messaging and sticking to certainly the economy, which is a high point of his presidency. But this is a cloud that was manufactured, that hung over the presidency for 2 years. And now on the central question, Robert Mueller has said that there was no collusion, no coordination with the Russians. I think he is well within his rights to point that out to the American people loudly and often and point out the number of people who were wrong. And frankly, I don't necessarily think, if he plays it right, that is politically bad advice either, because there are plenty of independents out there who might have been looking at the president with a jaundiced eye saying, I'm not too excited about this Russia thing. Is he guilty? I'm not sure. Now that he's exonerated on that major point, he might be able to bring them over while playing off the media that was so deeply dishonest and I think irresponsible throughout this entire imbroglio.
Yeah, I mean, he did talk about the media tonight, as he always does at these rallies, but he talked about immigration and building the wall and the economy and all kinds of other things. Here he is talking about what he says is the best two-year start for any president, probably in history.
The economy is roaring. The ISIS caliphate is defeated 100%. And after 3 years of lies and smears and slander, the Russia hoax is finally dead.
So Marjorie's got a lot of good talking points when it comes to the economy and record low unemployment, especially among groups like African Americans and Hispanics and women. He does have some issues that he can campaign on.
Well, health care being one that he came right out of the gate surprising people on, and that being one of the biggest issues when it came to what moved swing voters was actually health care. Democrats especially paid a lot of attention to that, and if he's looking at targeting audiences, I think that's one that frightened a lot of people because his approach was to repeal health care. And what we know that is the pre-existing condition clause that is in the existing ACA is something that's really important to a lot of people. So what is his plan for replacing? But, you know, on the front of whether he continues on this Mueller finding and sort of his being exonerated, I think the thing that he needs to take pause on is there still is a 300-page report looming. And so while there weren't criminal charges, I think a lot of those independents that Karl Rove and others are talking about are people that don't look at issues as black and white. That's kind of why they live in the gray, why they're independents. And so they're thinking a little bit more about, okay, yes, there may not have been criminal charges, but there was interference in the election by the Russians. That has been proven. And there's some pretty close ties to the campaign. So that's still in that gray area. So I think I would caution him on going too strong on that issue.
So, Mark, your official response then as part of this campaign?
Well, I can tell you that the president is going to continue to talk about all the above because the lies that the Democrats and many of their allies in the mainstream media for the last 2.5 years overshadowed so many great accomplishments in the economy. The defeat of ISIS over the weekend, last weekend, got scant coverage, if any at all, because of the focus on the Mueller probe and the AG's letter. So the president's going to talk about that. He's going to remind people that they've been lied to for 2 years. And then he's going to remind them about the economic success that many of them haven't heard of. In Michigan, just in the last 2 weeks, I think there have been about 7,000 auto jobs that have been announced that are coming back to Michigan, and some of those jobs are coming into our country that were planned outside of the country. So these are great things for the president to celebrate. He's got a long time to be able to make this case. And I think as more and more Americans are feeling the bigger paychecks, are feeling more comfortable with those jobs, the low unemployment, the more and more we're going to see people giving a fresh look at President Trump and his record. And why would you want to go to socialism?
Well, he brought that up tonight, too, and many other things. So we do want to talk about some more of the rally tonight with you guys. If you will stick around and come back, panel, thank you very much.